So, with the release of Spider-Man 2, Treyarch was on top of the world. People absolutely loved the game, but now expectations were a bit higher. Spider-Man 3 was still a few years out from hitting theaters, so they had to fill the void with something. They decided to go ahead and tackle one of the most interesting interpretations of Spider-Man with the Ultimate Comics series. And that led to this.
Ultimate Spider-Man is a comic series that started in the year 2000. It's sort of a modern-day reimagining of the character, finding new ways to retell the stories of how Peter Parker became Spider-Man, how his villains came to be, and fitting him into this Ultimate universe that Marvel created to give the same treatment to its other characters. The comic series was pretty popular. Not quite as much as the original series, but still, it fared well enough. There was one storyline in the series that gained a lot of attention though, the storyline that Treyarch decided to adapt for their next Spider-Man game, and that all revolved around Venom. There are a couple of things that people seem to remember the most about this game. One is its art style. It's made to look like a comic book in motion, and I think that it fares pretty well. There's a neat aesthetic going on here, and it looks great during gameplay, but where it really stands out is in the cutscenes. All of the story scenes are presented in this sort of moving comic book style. People are jumping in and out of frames, and overall it's just a neat way to portray action. Although not all of the character animations always look that great. The other element that people seem to remember the most about this game? You don't just play as Spider-Man, no, this time you also play as Venom himself. Free-roam gameplay as one of Spider-Man's villains. Now that is an appealing idea. But first, how did Venom come to be? Well, here's where it all starts. So, in this universe, Peter Parker and Eddie Brock grew up as friends. Their fathers were both at one time working on a cure for cancer. The solution was this black suit, which was supposed to be able to cure any disease that the person wearing it had. Unfortunately, the suit was never fully completed. Richard Parker was tricked into selling the suit and all of its research data over to a man named Bolivar Trask. To make matters worse, Eddie and Peter's parents were all killed in a tragic plane crash not that long afterward. Peter decides to take things into his own hands and tries to get the suit back from Bolivar Trask. It latches onto him and everything seems great at first. He's feeling faster and more powerful, but soon discovers that the suit has a sort of hunger. It tried to consume him whole. The suit was a sort of monster, and Peter knew that it was too dangerous to be left around. He attempted to destroy the suit, but when Eddie found out about this, he became angry and took what was left of it for himself, turning into the horrifying beast known as Venom. The two boys clash, and Peter discovers that he has a sort of weakness to Venom. Whenever he gets near the big guy, his head starts throbbing like crazy. Imagine a migraine, but multiplied by death. During their battle, Venom steps on an exposed wire and is seemingly killed by the electric shock. Peter tries to forget about the ordeal and go about his daily life in the weeks following, just trying to fit back into his day-by-day routine as Peter Parker and Spider-Man, warming up by breaking up a robbery attempted by Shocker. And this finally brings us back into the gameplay. Things are, for the most part, a lot like Spider-Man 2. Web swinging is pretty much the same, although I do think it's a little faster and I feel a little bit better control when swinging around this time. And of course, around the city, there are crimes to bust. There are no hero points in this game. Instead, you have this sort of checklist of things that you need to do in order to progress to the next story objective. This usually centers around finding these little tokens that are hiding around the city, breaking up street crimes, going through these races that I'm not the biggest fan of, and going on combat tours. Okay, so first off, races. Honestly, I don't even know what it is about these that I hate so much. It might just be because you're forced to go to all of these really specific points along the track when all I really want to do is just go from one point to another the fastest way I can find. It works for some people though, I guess. And then we have combat tours. Well, these are kind of neat. There's several groups of thugs just sort of scattered around the city. You're moving from one group to another, beating them up, getting onto the next one until they're all gone. That does sort of bring up one of my major complaints about this game though. In Spider-Man 2, I commented on how I thought that combat had been sort of dumbed down a bit. Well, it feels like it's even more simple here. There just aren't very many attacks going on here, stuff still feels really floaty, but what really bites is the dodging. There's no dodge button here. Instead, when your spider sense goes off telling you that someone's about to take a swing at you, you just have to jump out of the way. You're removing your entire person from the enemy just so you don't get hit. That's clumsy. Not to mention a pace breaker. Unfortunately, this does follow into the boss fights. Some of them are fine, I guess, but others, you're just spending the entire time jumping around aimlessly and occasionally hitting the opponent. This isn't fun, it's not engaging, it's tedious, and I don't understand why it was designed this way. Still, roaming around the city is fun enough, and once you've completed enough objectives, you can move on to the next story segment. Occasionally, you'll sort of switch characters. The perspective of the story will swap over from Peter Parker to Venom. We see that Eddie Brock has survived his shock therapy and is now sort of on the hunt for Peter. But before he can go too far, he needs to feed. The Venom suit is hungry, and it feeds off of the energy of other people. So, when you're playing as Venom, the suit will sort of drain your energy. So, whenever your health gets low, either by getting hit or by your suit trying to eat you alive, you need to go find some people. This little concept is introduced by...
Yay! Balloon!
Oh, and here I thought you learned your lesson last time.
Nom 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 nom.
You can at least see people twitching a bit after you fed on them, so you know that they're not dead, but this is still kinda weirdly dark. Isn't Venom supposed to be an anti-hero? Like, he's supposed to protect innocent people. That's his whole deal in the comics. Or, well, I guess in the Amazing Spider-Man comics. In the Ultimate Universe, he's sort of a different character. This kind of leads into my problem with Venom in this game. I know a lot of people really enjoy the Venom aspect of this game, and that's fine, it's just not really for me. I mean, I guess he's fun enough to play as. I think combat is a little better with him just because you get a better sense of power. That and you can throw cars around and stuff. And traveling around the city is neat because you can just super jump instead of having to swing everywhere. I mean, I still prefer web swinging personally, but this is still pretty neat. I just don't really like the way his character is portrayed, and I don't really think he has a whole lot to do in this story. Basically, Venom's whole deal in this game is he's either trying to hunt down Peter or he's trying to run away from people. Venom is in a constant loop of just getting captured and escaping in Ultimate Spider-Man. It gets old pretty fast. I can at least look forward to playing as Venom because he has the best boss fights. There's a bit more creativity going on here. I think a good example is when you're fighting Electro. Electro can heal himself by going over to these TVs in Times Square to sort of suck the power out of them. In order to keep that from happening, you can pick up cars and chuck them at the televisions. Break enough of them and he just won't have anywhere else to go to regenerate, so you can take him on out. See, that right there is some compelling game design. It's a lot more compelling than just the jumping bean that Spider-Man turns into. And I mentioned how Venom's story got kinda simple, but it doesn't really fare a whole lot better for Spidey either. Whenever he's not being chased down by Venom, he's chasing some other supervillain. They're only ever around for like a mission too, so they don't really have time to stick. So what it really amounts to is Spider-Man and Venom are just doing stuff, and then S.H.I.E.L.D. and Silver Sable just show up every once in a while. S.H.I.E.L.D. is, of course, the Strategic Homeland Intervention Espionage Logistics Division, or whatever that stands for now these days. Silver Sable, on the other hand, is a mercenary that was hired by Bolivar Trask to get the suit back. She and her Wild Pack are chasing Venom around the entire game and get him, and then he escapes, and then they get him back, and then he escapes again, and then he gets them, and then they have to escape from him, and I'm sorry, do I sound like I'm all over the place right now? Well, you know what? So is this story. It just goes in so many different directions. There is no cohesion here whatsoever. It's hard to go into detail and stay focused with this story because it isn't focused. So I'm gonna try to simplify it the best I can. Venom wants revenge on Spider-Man. Silver Sable works for Bolivar Trask. Trask wants the Venom suit back. So Venom gets chased by Silver Sable a lot. Venom is chasing Spider-Man, and Spider-Man's just trying to do his job in the middle of all of this. Everything else around it is just things that are happening, and not all of them are actually relevant to the larger story either. Beetle shows up twice. You chase him down and fight him as Spider-Man, and then you chase him down and fight him as Venom. And then he's never mentioned again. I don't know what his relevance was to this plot, and I don't think the game does either. Eventually, Trask is able to put together that Peter Parker is Spider-Man,
and getting close to him is giving Brock more control over the suit.
With all this knowledge in hand, Trask sends Silver Sable to capture Spider-Man.
Get in the damn car.
Their little scuffle gets interrupted by Venom, though. I guess he was getting as tired as I was about the whole Venom fetch quest, so he grabs Silver Sable and takes off with her. While Peter would like for her to just get her comeuppance, his whole great power and great responsibility thing comes into play, and he decides that he really does need to go save her. After chasing Venom and knocking him around a bit, he finally gives in to the tranquilizers that Silver Sable shot him with earlier, and gets knocked out. And the experiments begin. Okay, so what I think happened is that Trask and his scientists injected the Venom suit into Peter's bloodstream, and this creates Carnage. Venom, being locked in the same facility, is able to break out and starts chasing Carnage down. The two start scuffling around what's basically a buffet for them. I mean, look at all these little scientists running around. And Eddie is able to absorb what's left of the suit from Peter. And look, now he's got that iconic little spider symbol on him. Venom runs off and Peter decides to hunt down Trask, demanding answers about what happened to his parents. Trask hands over everything he's got, but then Venom shows up to try to get revenge on Trask. So throughout the game, whenever Trask actually got his hands on Venom, he decided to send Brock out on these little missions and tests and all that good stuff. And Venom wasn't really happy about being experimented on like that, so here we are. The old weasel tries to escape, but Venom is hot on his trail. Trask thinks that Silver Sable will help him, but no, their contract actually just expired. So now Spider-Man is the only one left to save the old guy. We have one last fight on a burning rooftop. Trask is alive, but arrested by S.H.I.E.L.D. Peter gets all the information he could have wanted about his parents, and Venom slips off somewhere to places unknown. Peter and Mary Jane talk about the foreboding nature of having somebody like Eddie Brock just out on the loose, and then we're shown exactly why that could be a problem. Eddie shows up at the prison that Bolivar Trask is being held in, and...
Eddie? I can't believe.
You know what I can't believe? I can't believe that after all the things you did, all the things you made me do, that after all of that, all you got was 3 years in a golf course prison.
You can't do anything to me in here. The guards... They aren't nearly well enough.
So yeah, Ultimate Spider-Man. This story is a mess. I really tried to stay on track here, but man, this story just has no flow to it whatsoever. I do not care for the narrative here, and you could probably already guess why. Is it serviceable? I mean, I guess? If all you're looking for is a laundry list of excuses for Spider-Man-ish things to happen, then yeah, this is what you're looking for, but otherwise, this does not offer me much. I think what really hurts it, outside of just the lack of focus, is just how redundant it is. You heard me complain plenty about chasing Black Cat around in Spider-Man 2, but guys, let me tell you, Ultimate Spider-Man is just chase people the game. Every other mission, it's just chasing someone. Chase Rhino, chase Electro, chase Venom, chase Beetle again, chase Green Goblin. Am I the only one getting tired of this?
So, do I recommend Ultimate Spider-Man?
The answer is yes and no.
So, honestly, guys, I'm not the biggest fan of this game. I don't like the races, I don't like the chases, I don't like the combat, I don't like the story. There's so little for me here. I mean, obviously this has something to offer other people, so I guess I recommend it. I think I might have to put my personal biases aside here and recognize that maybe there's a better game here than what I'm seeing. If all that you want is a gauntlet of Spider-Man villains to chase down and fight and maybe knock some people around or eat them as Venom, then yeah, I guess I would recommend this, but if you're like me and that just isn't enough for you, then I say give this one a pass. There's some people out there that absolutely love this game, and you know what? More power to them. In the sake of fairness, there are two things about the game that I would really like to point out that I did like. First of all, the music. The music is so much better in Ultimate Spider-Man than it was in Spider-Man 2. It's not so much orchestral, it's just really poppy and catchy. I think it adds a lot of energy to the gameplay. Secondly, one of the random crimes that can pop up when you're swinging around the city is a bank robbery. But it's not just any useless thug robbing the banks, it's actually one of Spider-Man's B-list villains, like the Boomerang. I love this concept. Why isn't this done in more Spider-Man games? As far as I can tell, this is the only time it's been attempted. I think it's the perfect way to add in some of the less popular and less powerful Spider-Man villains. I know that I've been harsh on this game, and given the reception that it's had over the years, it's very possible that I'm just wrong about it, but what can you do? I guess we'll just have to wait and see if I like the next game more.
And that sort of marked the end of an era. There were no more Spider-Man games made for that generation of consoles. It was going to be moving on to the HD generation next, so Xbox 360 and PlayStation 3. And I guess the Wii, if you want to count that. So, in the next episode, we're going to be taking a look at Spider-Man 3. Thank you for watching, and God help me.